I'm actually really feeling that intro. I like that intro. Kind of gets you in the mood, get you hype. Listen, you guys know when I have my guests, I gotta get a little spiffy. I don't want to do too much. I don't want to do too much, but I want to put a little flavor on it, put a little yellow on it, so you guys can see what it looks like with the canary yellow action. So, anyways, let's check the mic audio. Am I coming in clear? Am I coming in clear? Am I coming in clear? Oh, let me get this. Oh. There we go. There we go. Welcome back, everybody. This is the real Nathan Daley. Welcome back to my channel. I appreciate all the support, you guys. We have a great show tonight. I have a special guest. We're going to have a great conversation. We're going to be talking some politics, a little political action. And there's a lot to share. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to go over. You guys, if you're new to the channel, please go and follow me on these other platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. I can't stand Twitter. But please, by all means, go and check that out. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like the video. And let's talk about some very, very interesting things. You guys know, look, it's politics season, presidential season. You know, you're going to start seeing people campaigning, having these conversations. And I have been blessed with the opportunity to meet a phenomenal person that we're going to introduce a little shortly here as you guys start coming in to have some conversations about policies, about the Black community, about America, about this country, the direction it's going in. You see the thumbnail. It's called Building a Stronger Nation. What are the conversations that we need to have in regarding this? And I have an amazing guest who's going to really break it down to us about what's missing in this country. So I'm excited. I'm excited. Let me give you some backstory. I met this amazing lady, Miss Nichols. We met at the Black Agenda conference that was put on by Michi X. It was a great event. I had a great time. Met a lot of amazing people. And she, I had a chance to speak to her just regular stuff about the event. And then she said, "Hey, listen, I'm running for president." I said, "Oh, snap." So, snap. I said, "Is that so?" And it was just by coincidence. It's by coincidence. But I don't believe in coincidence, right? Like everything happens for a reason. And I told her, I said, "Hey, listen, I have a channel and, I have these difficult conversations on my channel. Would love to interview you and get your thoughts on the state of this country and also get your thoughts on the state of our community, what things are missing, what needs to be done." There's so much that goes on that we don't get a chance to talk about. And so this is an opportunity like none other to actually meet someone and have a conversation with the actual a person who's running for presidency, or any office for that matter. It's awesome to be able to sit and have a conversation with them and just really find out, one, what inspired you to want to run for president? What inspired you to want to take up this mantle? What inspired you to want to be a person of service, to serve the public? I think that's like the highest, honor of selflessness. Like, you think about serving others, you have to be selfless. At least those are the best people who should be serving, right? People who are selfless. You got to have the right heart, the right attitude, the right integrity, and so I'm a firm believer, like, if you're in public service or government, it should be free, right? Like, they should cover all your expenses and you shouldn't get paid. That's gonna kind of remove a lot of the corruption, all that kind of stuff. But we know that's not gonna happen. But regardless, people who do a good job need to get paid for their work. We just hope and pray that they have the right heart to do it. So that's what we're gonna cover, you guys. We're gonna be talking about a lot of that. And so as people are coming in, let's see. Moderators, if you could, please. I have our guest information in the description, her website, and then also her Linktree as well. If we could just throw that in the chat so that we can make sure the audience knows where to locate her and how to support. So, Ashaki Noni Nichols, you guys. This is our guest. We're going to ask her some tough questions, and everybody knows on my channel, we do facts over feelings over here. It ain't personal. So this is cool. This is my first opportunity. So I'm excited. And so I want to be able to, get practice in interviewing more people, especially people in different professions and different career paths. And so this is a good opportunity for me. So I told her we're going to ask some tough questions. She said she's ready. So I'm excited about that. And listen, before we even get started, we already have. Thank you. Shout out to Shay B. She gives me the $10 super chat. Says Nathan, I appreciate you and your great work. Listen, thank you. I appreciate you guys and your support. It means so much to me. You guys are the motivating factor because I've been discouraged, believe that, but you guys always come through and definitely support. So thank you so much, Shay. And I think that's what it's all about. Everybody supporting one another, getting the message out, having the conversation. It's so vital for us to do this. So I can't do this without you guys. So again, thank you so much. Truly blessed to have you guys. So get your questions together, you guys. It's going to be a roller coaster conversation, and I'm excited. So without further ado, you ready? Ashaki, throw the thumbs up in the back. She says she ready. She ready. All right. Without further ado, you guys, my amazing guest. Miss Nichols, how are you doing, my dear? Hold on, let me give you a round of applause. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, so you have an amazing story to tell us. Before we even get into that, let me adjust my little. I got this little. Bam! All right, we're gonna get us even. All right,
Okay.
so you have an amazing story. Please introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them who you are and what brings you here today on this lovely channel.
Yes, well, my name is Ashaki Noni Nichols. I know a lot of people will ask, am I from Africa? I'm actually not. I was born in South Bend, Indiana, and my parents are also from South Bend, so are my grandparents and great grandparents. About at least 4 generations, and my father actually traced our family back about 150 years to the plantation owner that actually owned our family. My maiden name is Wright. So I'm definitely an American citizen. However, when I was born, my mother wanted to name me the beautiful gift of God, and she didn't have the translation of my name. And at that time, her gynecologist had a book of African names, and so that's how my name came around. Ashaki means beautiful, and Noni means gift of God. So that's a little bit of background on my name. Okay. And I was born in South Bend in 1971. It's been an interesting way of life for me. Life wasn't always wonderful and great, but it's getting better. Unfortunately, I was a victim of abuse growing up by two different family members, and I actually wrote a book on it called Stealing Lives, because as I got older, I started to realize how precious time was and how we actually steal time from one another when we're violating one another, or unfortunately, in the case of relationships, we waste each other's time knowing that this person really shouldn't be with us, but we don't want to be alone ourselves. Right. So we take advantage of that other person's time, and then they're nice enough to give us their time. And so that's really how I came up with the title Stealing Lives, and really appreciating time more with people, and also learning how to forgive in that. And through just growing up in different states, I was raised in California after being born in Indiana. So we got to California when I was about 5 years old. So I grew up in Orange County, California. That's a little bit of where my accent comes from. A lot of people like, you sound kind of like you're from the Midwest, but then coastal all at the same time. And that's why, because I grew up in the 80s where there were Valley girls and different linguistics such as that. And growing up in Southern California, this is just how I ended up. I also lived as an adult in Indiana. I got a chance to live in Arizona for a short time, and Seattle, Washington. I currently live in Georgia, so I say y'all here and there, being in the South. But again, it's been a great run. I've always wanted to be in politics. I just didn't know what office. And I always have had a passion for the federal level offices. The state and local level, they are important as well, but a lot of the information is disseminated from the federal level. And I found that that's really where my passion and focus was. And that's what led me to want to run for the office of president, because I really just saw the divide in our country and just how it's continued to be further divided. And no one's really coming up with solutions. They're pointing out all the problems, which I don't want to say that they're very blatant and obvious, but they are. But people really know, okay, well, how do we get to the other side? Where should our focus be so we can actually put our efforts towards being better as a country and as a nation? So that's really what brought me to run for president.
Interesting. One thing you mentioned was people point out the problem, but never any solutions. And one of the things I've always realized, especially even with my career path, I was always tasked to solve problems. You know,
Mhm.
just identifying the problem was not good enough, right? Like people know, oh, here's crime, here's this type of crime. What are you going to do about it? And I always believe that, you know, people can tell you where they want you to go, but then they can't show you how to get there. Well, then that defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
So what I hear from politicians all the time is, here's the problem, you know, gun violence and mental health and, you know, broken homes and poverty and, you know, immigration, you know, and you know, you have these things on your policies. We're going to go down the list,
Mhm.
but they talk about all these things, but then they never lay out any type of strategy or
Mhm.
practical strategy to
Yeah.
actually get rid of it. And I hear them speak all the time. So what would you say, right? What would you say is when we're talking about the division in this country? Because I would even argue that even within our own communities, we have a lot of division.
Yes.
How do you how do you address that? Like what is the approach to that?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, looking to what we can actually agree on,
Hmm.
because we already know what we don't agree on, right?
Correct.
So, but there are three things we can agree on: a place to live, food to eat, and a
Hmm.
decent wage. Now, it looks different to everyone, because some people, they're okay living in a studio apartment because that's really all they need. But then there are other people who want to have a 5,000 square foot home.
Right.
Neither person is wrong. It's just that is how they want to live. But to that, they need a livable wage in order
Right.
to do that. They need to know that the food that they're eating is clean.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of that is disseminated from your government, but at the same time, your government should be empowering you to do that of your own admission, right?
Right.
It shouldn't be the government always handing out to fix the problem. And that's really what I see. I see a lot of, unfortunately, our government, they make decisions, policy decisions that affect all of our lives, whether positive or negative. And in the past few years, we've seen how the negative effects of actually locking down our country has this trickle down effect that we see now. We see higher gas prices, we see higher food prices, because at the time they were pouring milk onto the ground as opposed to figuring out how to get it to people before it's spoiled,
Right.
right? Instead of making sure that the goods and services that were being transported at the shipyards was actually getting to land and delivered, it was being held up because, okay, you didn't meet this mandate, you didn't meet these policies. And they're like, well, I should never have to do that. So you've got these barges sitting out in the middle of the water, not being able to deliver the goods that are needed. And are they any good by the time they get there if they're, perishable items?
Right.
So it was the decisions that were made out of the reach of the population. They were at the behest of the government. But then the government wants to come in and say, okay, well, we're gonna, do all these bailouts and we're going to give people money and and that didn't help either. And now we're seeing the effects of inflation,
Right.
hyperinflation,
Hyper.
unfortunately. Right. And so again, this goes back to policy. So you cause the problem and then you try to come in on the, on the being the prince. I'm just going to use like the Cinderella story. You try
Right.
to come in as the prince to rescue everybody, but you've caused this problem.
Correct.
You're not helping with your solution. Your solution is actually making it worse because you're not empowering people. Now people feel, how should I say, entitled,
Mm.
right? Because you said stay home, we stayed home. You gave people money so they could live, but nobody was really looking at what happens after this.
Right.
How are people going to get back to work? What does that look like? And I know hindsight tells us, okay, obviously we should have made better choices. And at the time, there was so much hysteria that nobody could really focus. It was a very emotional time. And I would have honestly appreciated a man's mental alpha
Mm. And
mindset
that,
that would have been like, okay, first of all, we're not doing this, we're doing this. Because if we do this long term, too long, people are not going to be in a better place afterwards. And I didn't see that type of leadership.
yeah, it wasn't present, and I think there was so much. I mean, people were being censored. You had a lot of
Mhm.
medical professionals being censored online. People were censoring on YouTube. They're censoring on social media platforms. It was actually a very confusing and a scary place. Like, I don't think a lot of people knew what to expect. And it was. I think people were expecting, something different. I don't know what, this was I mean, this is a lot of our first time
Yeah.
experiencing something of that magnitude. The question now, to your point, is where do we go from here, right?
Mhm.
When it comes to the, racial divide that the media really puts out a lot of, into the society to make us believe that we hate each other more than we really do, in a sense.
Mhm.
What type of idea would you implement, or what would you implement to kind of repair the race relationship in this country?
Yeah, I think we need to start learning history in a raw form.
Okay.
Really looking at the materials that we have out there. I know that a lot of people see CRT as a bad word because it's gotten a bad rap. And maybe we need to get away from calling it critical race theory to actually just calling it history in the raw form and really looking at, because our country has had some good highlights and we've had some lowlights.
Right.
But by censoring certain parts of our history, we're doomed to repeat it.
Mm.
And so I see a lot of behaviors that, maybe my mom grew up with now, and it's 2023, but it's a very small segment of
Right.
individuals, but that's being magnified because they're
Yes.
given the microphone.
Yes.
People are controlled by fear and anxiety. And race relations can bring on both of those aspects. And by that, again, politicians always want to run on problems. Race relations will always be a problem if you make it a problem.
Okay.
We're not really trying to solve the problem because, I mean, I live in Georgia, and a lot of people will, if you're from the north, you might say, oh, the south is really racist. Now there's parts of racism everywhere. Trust me, I've lived all over the place. It exists everywhere. But at the same time, don't assume that people are one way just because they're in a certain location. And that's what
Correct.
we do. We stereotype, we discriminate just because we think that's how people are without having that conversation first. It's really turning the corner and saying, okay, you're my neighbor. You might not like the way I look, and that's fine. But can we agree on not destroying each other's property?
Right.
For example, can we agree on, I'm not going to destroy your business, don't destroy mine. Let's share goods and services. Let's provide for the customers in our area and really work together. So that, I think that's the biggest part. And I know a lot of people might say, "Oh, that's just a kumbaya moment," but those are facts.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, those are facts. If you cannot work with somebody else that you don't like, and we've all been there at a job with people we don't like, where are you really left?
Nothing.
It's like, okay, y'all, we got to figure this out because the government, and that's the one thing everybody needs to know, the government was not designed to save you. The government was designed to assist you. That
Mm.
does not mean support. When I'm assisting somebody, that's like I'm walking the elderly lady across the street and I'm holding her arm. I'm not picking her up and carrying her across the street. And that's what we need to get out of that mindset with the government. It's not the government's job to carry you across the street. That's not it.
So, so with that being said, what are your thoughts on government assistance then, right? So we're to the assist as far as people call them handouts or assistance or what are your thoughts on that? Some people want to end those things. Some people feel like, or depending on what party you represent, and then after that, explain to people what party you represent because it's not Republican, it's not Democrat. So I want you to touch on that as well. But yeah, what are your thoughts on government assistance?
Okay, well, I'm actually a recipient of
Mm,
government assistance.
okay.
I've I was a single mom at one time in my life, and I did have food stamps. I did have cash aid to assist me when I was not able to get a job or work full time. But what I utilized those funds for was a hand up, not a handout.
Mm,
And I was very blessed to have people in my life at the time that explained that to me. I also had my mother and my grandmother say, we paid taxes and made sure that the money is there. So when you or any of our other children need it in this family, that money is there. But it's not a lifestyle. And that's the other thing that my family instilled in me. It's not a lifestyle. The individuals that I worked with at the different agencies, they said this is not a lifestyle. So they actually had programs to assist me going back to school and assist me getting transferable skills. So when I went back to work, I was successful and I
right.
was able to actually stay at work. I mean, and even after that, I went through a time when I was married, and my children and I, and my spouse at the time, we found ourselves homeless. So I've been homeless. So
Mm,
I know how it is to actually have to go to a shelter. And luckily, I mean, I didn't have to stay there. I took the last money that I had and I was accepted into a transitional housing program after that. And I was able to get work, get back on my feet. And I'm so grateful to God that I have not had that happen to me again. And it taught me a lesson. Do not ever get back into this. But they had a program within that transitional housing program that actually taught me about budgeting and how not to get back into the situation where I would be homeless again with my children. And I'm so grateful for as an organization called Families Forward, and they really helped. Now, with that, there are government programs that are there. There are grants out there that help organizations like these. So that socialist part of our country, because
right.
everybody they talk about we don't want socialism. Well, we have it. Sorry, y'all. It's here. I hate to break it to you. It's here. But here's the thing. Is it being used in a way that actually helps people
Right.
get back to where they need to be and really impressing upon them that not how not to get back into homelessness. And I know a lot of people might say, like, how do you get into it and out of it? Because what you don't want is you don't want dependency built and you don't want it to be a lifestyle. Getting
Mhm.
out of that situation where people are afraid to get off of welfare because they think they can't afford to live if they get a job. What if it happens again? And so, really giving people the tools that they
Right.
need to succeed. So, with that, I actually started a new independent party, and it's called the Redemption Party. And this party has a focus of fiscal responsibility, um, limiting federal government to empower local government, and also constitutional sovereignty.
Mm,
So I'm neither Republican nor Democrat, and I know people may hear me talk and they may say, oh, she's conservative or she's liberal. She sounds like these different buzzwords that we've heard before. And the reason why I started a new party is because there are some individuals out there within both parties on the extreme sides, and I'm like, I can't roll with you. I'm sorry. I can't. Like it gets to a point where it's like, okay, I can only hold my nose so much.
Right.
To where I'm like, there's got to be some integrity on both sides. Now I know the Republicans, they always want to come in, all puffed up. Well, we're conservative. No, you're not. Stop that. Stop that. And then, unfortunately, on the Democratic side, and my husband's a Democrat, I feel bad for him because I was like, y'all wild. Man.
Yeah.
Look, some of y'all wild. Okay,
Yeah. They
it's too much. It's too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a health secretary, and I'm not downing anybody's lifestyle.
Mm.
Be who you are, choose who you are. But what you're doing is you're contributing to the delinquency of minors when you are talking about care that really isn't care.
Mm.
And you talk about how you were able to have children and you're convincing children to dismantle themselves.
Right.
How do you juxtapose that? Like, how do you really have that conversation with somebody like, hey, you should permanently destroy who you are, but you'll be happy? No, stop that.
I don't know. I always say, the United States is looking like the new Sodom and Gomorrah. It's like it's taking a dive. Morality is taking a nosedive in this country. To where, and I guess, people say like, there'll be a time where people see good as
Evil and evil
evil
is
and
good.
evil is good, right? And
Hmm.
so when you start messing with the children and not protecting them mentally, emotionally, and physically, there's a problem. And we are definitely on the wrong side of this thing. And so
Yeah.
I think it is. It takes a lot of people to speak up, and people are speaking up. But again, it's the media is such a powerful tool
It is.
to push propaganda.
Mhm.
Social media is pushing it.
Mhm.
It has gotten and people are it's gotten crazy. I
Yeah.
do have a quick question for you, real
Mhm.
quick. We have one from the audience. Hold on, I think your
Sure.
mic too. Your
Oh,
mic can see your shirt. I think it's waving around. It might be.
oh, is it here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Is
think
this
when you're
good?
moving, it's you gotta wait.
Oh, it's rubbing back and forth because I'm
Yeah,
moving around. I am so sorry.
oh, you're fine. You're
I'm
fine.
sorry, y'all.
Yeah, I was like, what is that? The wind going? Let me see. I'm gonna pull up this question. I think this is a great question.
Okay.
Millennial Mark TV says, he said, what does the panelists think could help break the mindset of those within the community who do indeed use government assistance as something that's generational and that they are entitled to? And that's a good question.
Mhm.
How do you what is the method to break that generational dependency?
Mhm.
How do you get people to not abuse it? Right. I'm with you. Like, I believe it's necessary. I think it's a great thing that we offer. I think the problem is you have people who abuse it. How do you deal with that aspect of it?
Well, one, you have to not offer that service to anyone who is not a citizen. So we have to start there.
That's
You
true.
cannot offer individuals who are not citizens of this country just because they have a child here
Mm,
assistance when they have not paid into our tax structure. So that's the first thing.
okay.
Generationally, there needs to be an exit plan. So for the welfare systems that we have in place, again, hand up, not hand out, there isn't an exit plan. And what I mean by that is if you have someone who may be in high school and had their child, are we really trying to help that person finish high school, go to college, get a degree, and actually get into a field of work? And while they're not working, say, okay, once your child turns 18 months or two, we're going to have you on a track in between that time of going to school, learning parenting skills, setting you up with a daycare so that at the end of this program, you are going to be successful, whether that's starting your own business or working for another company, right? And really giving people that insight as to they are more than where they are at right now.
Right.
Because those, when I had assistance, I was actually involved in those programs, so I know how they work. But
Okay.
they're not implemented in every state. However, being that it's federally funded, we
Mm,
can actually put measures in place to say, okay, if you're going to use this federal funding, this is how it has to be implemented. And that's it. And you're not going to have people say, well, I've had 5 babies, so I can be at home for 10 years. No,
right. Right.
no.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. We're not going to just continue to have babies so we can stay at home and then the clock constantly resets. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
no, you have that second baby, you're already working, right? And you may have to, take some downtime with your job. And then the government may have to come in and say, okay, we can supplement maybe your food until you get back, but it cannot be this consistent, hey, I'm just going to have a kid so I can stay you know, on welfare the whole time. It's like, no, there has to be a cutoff.
And you're very generous because I am more of a benevolent dictator when it comes to some policies.
Okay.
And I believe that I think that certain things have gotten so far gone that
Mhm.
the the course correction has to be just as intense, just as
Oh,
strong, just as strict.
yeah.
And so I'm gonna give away all my ideas. I ain't running for office.
Right, right, right.
I can share this, but you want to be careful because people bring these things back up. They're like, "Well, you
Oh, of
said
course.
3 years ago that," but
Right,
honestly,
right.
it's bad. The
Hmm.
abuse is bad.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I and to your point, um, I think it's necessary to have, but I also believe, and I think you said it perfectly. You have to be able to educate, train, have those things, and make it's mandatory.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
this is the whole purpose to get you back on your feet, not to
Right.
not to get you laying down. And if you get in this program
Yeah.
with one kid, if you have another child, you're off the program. You
Hmm.
violated the program. Here are the stipulations
Yeah.
of the program. And so
Yeah.
because you getting further and further into poverty, further and further into debt,
Yeah.
isn't helping anything. And our job isn't to facilitate or incentivize bad behavior. So
Right.
that's, if you can't pass a drug test, if you get pregnant again, if you're not
Hmm.
actively searching for jobs, whether male,
Right.
female, or those on light disability or whatever it might be, if you're
Hmm.
not following the program's instructions, you're
Right.
out of here.
Yeah.
We're not here to take care of you, but we do want something to help people get back into society.
Right.
And if we're
Exactly.
going to be paying for you to be comfortable,
Yeah.
you're going to be taking these classes, these courses, and so forth and so on. Even parenting classes, I think, should be
Oh yeah.
in there.
That's all inclusive. Yes.
So,
Definitely.
so so yeah.
But
Let me ask you this.
that would de-incentivize it, right? Because people would be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm out of school and I don't want to have to." But it's
Right.
like, hey, there's got to be accountability, and that's what we really don't
Absolutely.
have.
Absolutely. If you want to, I think that's the beauty of the federal government. Even to your point,
Mhm.
when they are funding things, it comes
Yeah,
with their rules. At
yeah,
my department, they have different grants that they give police
yeah,
departments under the guise that you follow these guidelines. Like, so,
yeah,
there's certain stipulations. That's the only way a federal government can really enforce things on local government entities and things like
yeah,
that is through the money.
yeah,
You mentioned earlier about you hinted a little bit on immigration. I know
yes,
immigration is part of your policies that you want to focus on. And let me
yeah.
read out your policies so people know
Go
what
ahead.
you're focused on. So currently, on your website, you guys please go and check that out. I'll put the link up here and it's also in the description. You are focusing on reparations,
Mhm.
immigration, voting rights, anti-black hate crime bills. I think that's very interesting. Want to dive into that. The economy, education, healthcare, housing, gun safety, and marijuana legislation. So those are great hot topics. You mentioned immigration when talking about um, utilizing tax resources and not being a citizen.
Mhm.
What is your stance on immigration as it relates to this country?
Well, I want a moratorium on our border for at least 10 years.
Okay.
And during
Explain
that
to people what
time,
that means. Yeah.
yes. So a moratorium means we're shutting it down.
Okay.
Nobody comes in, but
Mm,
people are going to get out. So you shut it down for a minimum of 10 years. And here's why: because it
that.
takes someone who applies for citizenship anywhere from 8 to 10 years to complete that track. A lot of people don't know that. It takes a
Mm,
long time to become a citizen of our country, which means we definitely need to update our immigration laws and make it, I won't say easier, but make the process more streamlined and efficient, so it doesn't take 10 years, right? But it takes that long because you're doing background checks. You're trying to make sure people are being good citizens and they're not just, criminals coming into the country. So
right.
you've got that, shutting down the HB1 visas and the
Hmm.
chain migration that goes on with that. People get jobs over here and then they become citizens. But what people may not know is they can also bring their family members from whatever country they're a part of. And those family members don't have the same litmus test that they do, as they had to get the job over here. So they don't have to have the education. They don't even have to be functioning members of society to work, and they can end up in our welfare system. So
Mm,
that's another thing. And then this will also give 10 years for anybody who has come here illegally to be deported from the country. And if there were any children that were born during that 10-year period, their citizenship would be revoked. They would not be a citizen of the United States,
there you
and they
go.
would be deported with their parents. They would not be left here. House children have gotten separated in the past couple of years during our border crisis. And then also, to that, we have to make sure that, I'm sorry,
Hmm.
individuals that purposely come here from other countries to have their children, so that their children have dual citizenship, they're denied citizenship because we know what you're doing on purpose and you're trying to rig the system. And that's a no. We're not doing that anymore. And I think within that qualified 10 years, you would see a definite shift. I know that there would be, I was in a Twitter space the other night and they were like, well, what happens to the crops that need to be picked? And what happens to these lower efficient jobs that, you know, people may not want? Well, people may want those jobs,
Right.
but not everybody's built for the labor in either space. I mean, I know when I tried to get a job at a hotel, I couldn't even get a maid service job. Now, you're talking at the time, I had my high school diploma. I did not have the degrees I have now, but I still had a couple of years of college. But because they told me because I didn't have a hospitality certificate that I couldn't work there. But I noticed that there were other people that worked there that couldn't even speak English. So
Right.
is it just because I can't work there, or you just don't want to pay somebody to work there, but you know you can pay this other person under the table to work there? So it's really making sure that we're not creating another slave class
Mm,
within immigration, which is something that is happening today. I was actually listening to the news today, and there's a great concern about the violence that's going on at the border, about violent people that are making their way into our borders, because the border itself is a deterrent. But if you do not have the policies in place once individuals cross over the border illegally or come here legally, you're going to have a not a great situation. And so we really need to look at the policies and tightening up the policies so people have the opportunity, if they want to apply for citizenship, they're coming here with a job. And I'm not talking about working at McDonald's. That's not qualified. You got to come here, making 50, 60,000 a year.
right.
So you need to be qualified to work here and not just throwing money at people because they're trying to. And I mean, even in Chicago, I think they have a $500, uh, it's not UBI, but if you're a non-citizen, you're able to get this $500 a month to supplement your income. And I'm like, why are we giving money to individuals that aren't citizens here, and we have a homeless problem? Like,
Ex-
what are we doing as a
That's,
country? Like, what did I miss something? I think I missed it. So,
we're not America first.
yeah,
And that's
no,
that's a
not right
problem.
now.
Yeah,
It's
we're
a
not America
huge
first.
problem.
It's a huge problem. I travel a lot. I've been to probably 13 different countries. And let me tell you something. The stuff that the American government, the way we do things over here is not allowed in other places. You can't just walk up in people's country
Mm.
and think you're just going to buy some land, buy a house, and get a job. One thing is if you want a visa over there, you have to show that you have skills. There's
Mhm.
certain countries where they only give work visas for maybe 10 different types of professions.
Yeah.
They don't want people in their country
Yeah.
bumming out,
Yeah.
taking it. And so there's order, there's structure.
Yeah.
You have to be a desirable person to come over there. And if you
Mhm.
commit a crime, you can kiss them freedoms goodbye. A lot of countries will
Ooh.
have you with no due process. You just sitting away, riding. You come out, you don't even look the same, and then they ship you up out of here.
Yeah.
We have gotten, and I understand why we try to be a fair society, and even by doing that,
Mhm.
there's still so it's still so unbalanced. It's weird. It's like we advertise being like this benevolent country that's all welcoming and so forth, but there's so much disparities with
Yeah.
and discrimination and racism throughout the system.
Yeah.
It looks good on paper,
Yes.
but when you see what's going on behind the scenes, America does not reflect what they talk about. Um,
Mm.
and to your point, one of our biggest cities have the biggest homelessness problems in California. It's
Mhm.
it's madness. In New York,
Yeah.
8 people living in a closet,
Yeah.
and so yes,
Mhm.
immigration. I say it all the time. I go to other countries, people they ask me, how long are you staying, when are you leaving? You
Mhm.
know, and they're serious about it. They want to know
Oh yeah.
where you're living at. They're
Mhm.
confirming these things before you
Yep.
walk into their country. I know people who got off the plane and they send them right back on the one returning flight,
Yeah.
because they didn't have stuff together. So
Yeah.
they won't allow you to get married and think you're a citizen. Some
Yeah.
countries won't allow that.
Yeah.
You even when you've been there your whole life, they don't consider you a citizen.
Yeah.
You make one wrong move and you're out of there.
Yeah.
And that fear creates a level of discipline, respect, and appreciation for another person's country.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have respect when they come over. They come over here and they're here to
Yeah.
make money, and they'll set up shop, create their own little town
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
everything, and they can care. They don't want to learn the language. They can
Yep.
care less. So I
Yep.
agree. I think that's a huge issue. And I'm my family as immigrants. They came from they legally came here from Jamaica. So
Right.
they're foreigners, but they did the paperwork. They
They
followed
did the right way.
did it the right way. You know what I mean? And so I do understand that at the end of the day, the only thing I've heard about people who have issues with immigration is those who do it illegally. I've
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
heard anybody say anything bad necessarily. Out in the open. They
Yeah.
want people to do it legally. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I
very
just don't want anybody cutting in line from other people like your family
correct,
members who did it the right way. I think it's
correct.
extremely wrong for somebody to just come here illegally and they're given everything. And I'm like, wait a minute, somebody's been here for 5 or 6 years and they're
Yep,
still waiting in line for their citizenship, but you're giving
yep.
resources to somebody who actually broke the law and we're incentivizing breaking the law.
That's
Nobody's really
true.
talking about that. And I'm like, that's not, no, we cannot be a nation of laws like that. I had a cousin. She
Mhm.
worked in Qatar for a short time. And so she taught me and let me know. She was like, oh no, I couldn't just go over there.
Right.
They had to know where I was working, to your point, when I was coming, when I was leaving. She
Yep.
actually was getting married, and because she couldn't just be over there,
Yep.
she actually had to be married because she had a child. Like it was
Mm.
just a lot, and
Oh,
nobody talks about that. And I'm like, oh, they're serious over there.
yeah.
That's how we need to be over here.
Yes.
If you're
Yes.
gonna be here, the company that you work for needs to be responsible for you.
Needs to
You
be
can't just hide
responsible.
in the shadows
There you
and just
go.
be here.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true. And
Yeah.
and you know, other countries they're not with this touchy-feely stuff. They don't really care
Mm.
about your feelings.
Nope.
They're running a country,
Mhm.
and I feel like this country's running on emotions.
Oh yeah.
You know what I
Oh yeah.
mean? It's running on emotions, and when you run off of emotions, you cannot properly operate and execute things that are life-saving in this country because you're so
Yeah.
worried about how people feel versus what's in their best interest.
Yeah.
Um, so let me dive into this because we're talking about America first.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on outsourcing as it relates to the jobs and
Mhm.
goods and services? How that's taking away from jobs here and us, I guess you would say, making things in America for Americans in order to keep the economy circulating stronger here versus outsourcing to like your China,
Mhm.
Vietnam and Japan. We get a lot of goods and a lot of goods from outside the country, and we don't do much
Yes.
inside. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I want us to be more of a manufacturing country the
Mm,
way we used to be. We don't make things anymore. We're a service.
industrial.
We're
Yeah.
becoming a servicing company, but we are not a manufacturing company. And here's the rub: when we do start manufacturing things, they're from other countries that actually own those factories, as opposed to us owning those factories. So we are making goods and services here that we actually have to pay more for because they belong to somebody else's country. So we're paying their tariffs and we're paying their taxes on top of our own. It's a bad business model. I don't know if anybody here on the line is familiar with Ross Perot, but I remember him running
Yeah.
for president, that little
Yep.
bitty man,
I love me.
and nobody could stand the way he sounded, but he was very wise. And
Yes, he
he
was.
says, you're going to hear a giant sucking sound, and
Mm,
it's only going to get worse based on the policies that you're putting in place now. By outsourcing, you're going to find yourself one day being a servicing country. And here we are.
yep.
I'm 51 years old and I still remember that man saying those words. And here we are. We have to start making things, but we have to work with companies that are here in the United States so they don't have to go through so much regulation to charge so
It's
much,
true.
right?
It's true. Right.
So they can actually pay their employees a decent wage so those employees can then obviously afford where they live and they can afford to raise their children and have a life of not struggling
Correct.
while they're working. So there is that ecosystem that's in balance. Now, is it the government's complete job to fix it? No. But where the government can, like I said, with regulations and with incentives, we can do better. Like we've got the CHIPS Act. And everybody's like, yeah, we're going to make all these chips in Taiwan. Why aren't we making the chips here? Why? Help me.
Right.
Help me.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm
Right.
saying? Like
Yeah.
we all need these chips. Like, why can't we make them here
Those
and
are
then ship
jobs.
them to Japan and
Mm,
China where they make their cars, right?
mm.
Or hey, how about we just start making some of those cars over here that need those chips, and then we start shipping those cars so that we can bring that money here to the
I
United States.
I agree. And that's not my area of expertise, but I do
Mhm.
understand enough of it to know that
Mhm.
what ends up happening is the prices. This will impact price on things, and Americans
Yeah,
want things goods at a very reasonable price.
right.
But the reality is, I love when you said shut the borders down for 10 years. I love that idea. I think, and again, I'm always like very radical in my thinking. I
Okay.
think that, you bring all industries back into this country and we simply just build and rebuild our own country within ourselves
Yeah.
before we start going back out. We get all 90, I don't know the percentage, but we get a large percentage of our goods from China, our
Mhm.
everyday
Yeah.
materials, and a lot of them we know they're cheap and things like that, cheap labor. We know this is capitalism. People want to turn a profit. I get that, but you think about how many jobs are were taken away from this
Yeah.
country,
Mhm.
and we don't have anything that's like made in America and then sent over to other countries. Not that I'm aware of. I don't everything that's made in USA. It's like American kind of bred companies. But as
Mhm.
far as do we have, and I don't know this person, but I'm not necessarily asking you, but I don't see a lot of our industries that we're creating and we are actually
Yeah.
sending to other countries where it's like, hey, this is made in America. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
so I've been to a lot of countries. I didn't see a Ford. I didn't see a Ford pickup truck.
Mhm.
I didn't see that car there, right?
Mhm.
I did not see it.
Right.
But when I see construction equipment, I see
Mhm.
Japanese owned construction equipment.
Mhm.
We see German,
Mhm.
Japanese, Korean vehicles. And there's
Right.
good stuff. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying, we got John Deere equipment, but are we sending deer over John Deere stuff? Like, I don't know.
Right. Right.
And I just don't personally. I just don't know, and that could just be my own ignorance. But all I'm saying is we should equally be just as competitive with every single goods that's out here, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's the fair trade, right? I think
yes,
that's a lot of what Trump was talking about and
yes,
what he was trying to get people back to. It's
hmm
being fair
more
about
balance.
what we're doing. We're not going to just buy everything from everybody else. And then when it comes to our goods, everybody's like,
We'll
we
take
really
nothing.
don't want your stuff. But it's
Exactly.
like, okay, then we're not going to buy. How about this? How about we don't buy your stuff, right? How about we cut that in half?
There you go.
And we focus on making our own things. We focus
There you
on
go.
making steel again
Yep.
and aluminum
Yep.
again. We try to revive the factories again because there were towns like in Detroit and in certain parts of Indiana where people, I don't want to say that they were generational not construction workers, factory workers, but they were. And
Right.
generationally they would work in the factory. Like that's kind of what you did, but it was good money. You raised your family. You didn't want for anything because you had a great insurance plan. And those things should still be in our country because we're still making cars. Why aren't we still having that American dream for some people? Right?
Right.
So yeah, it's getting back to it.
Whew. I listen. I gotta give you props for that. Listen, you guys, I'm here with the lovely Miss Nichols. She is running for president. We're having a very, very, very important conversation, and I'm loving the response. You are spot on with these so far, you guys. If you're not familiar, please go and she's part of the Redemption Party. Please go to her website, nicholsforpresident.org. Her link tree is also in the chat as well. It'll be put back in the chat for you guys to follow. Please go and check out and donate and support and follow. So let's get back into that because I think you're absolutely correct. It made me think about when you said Ross Perot because I remember him. He was a short little white guy, funny, raspy voice, but he was rich. He was a businessman,
Mm-hmm.
and people forget that
Yeah,
this country is a business,
it is.
and it's not necessarily the business of loving its people, right? Unfortunately,
Yeah,
and I think that's where the divide is when it comes to the American people.
yeah,
It's capitalism over people.
yeah.
And when we try to compare ourselves to other countries like your Finlands, your Norways, your Germanys, and things like that, your Japans,
Mm-hmm.
these countries put their people over profit. It's people over profit.
Yeah.
And when you run a country that way, you get better outcomes. People complain
Right.
about over here the health issues, the
Mm-hmm.
violence, the crime,
Yeah.
incarceration. I mean, homelessness. This is a first world country with third world problems, and it doesn't make sense. And to your
Yeah.
point earlier, which is what inspired you to run,
Yeah.
is that this place is so backwards, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely doesn't have to be. And so, with that, let's dive into healthcare, right?
Yes.
So, I don't know much about healthcare except for people eat bad and it's killing them.
Right.
you know, and if we're talking about our community specifically,
Mm.
that's one of our leading causes of death is health
Yeah.
related issues,
Yeah.
and gun violence or just death
Mm-hmm.
homicide for Black
Yeah.
men. So the problem with this country, just in general, and I'm gonna just give my little 2 cents,
Okay.
is that it's like they purposely go out their way to poison the people and then sell the people a way to sustain their life after poisoning them in
Mm-hmm.
order to make money off of them.
Yeah. You got it
Um,
right.
that is American healthcare to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you see outside of the corruption? Because we know, and even with the corporate involvement within government being a problem, which I think is the biggest problem.
Mm.
This country being ran by corporate interests.
Yeah.
Um, how do you divide that? But before we get into that, I'm curious on your thoughts on healthcare, because healthcare is the same problem essentially. It's
Yeah.
you have these pharmaceutical companies that are married to our government, where it should be operating like church and state. It's supposed to be separate.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
what are your policy thoughts and perspective on healthcare?
Okay. Well, you definitely set up the question well, and you're right. Humans should not be a business model
Ooh,
for companies, and we are a
that's,
walking business model from cradle to grave.
oh, literally.
Okay, we're going to inject you, and if you get sick enough, guess what? We've got a pill for that, we've got an elixir for that to keep you alive but not
Elixir.
healthy.
Right.
Right, we're going to keep you alive just enough to keep you on our supply so that we're getting our cut out of your life. They are some serious drug dealers. Like, I
Yes.
mean, let's just be real. Let's
Yeah.
just be real. Like, I
Yep.
understand, like, and we'll get into that conversation later, but it is, we are their business model, and we
Ooh,
shouldn't be.
no.
We should be consumers, right? Because we consume, we're human, but we should not be made sick, to your point, to then buy more poison to get us slightly well, but still keep us sick. And then, in turn, we go to the grave and we just keep repeating this
Mm,
cycle. I've said it before to somebody, there's a difference between health and being healthy. Health is you go to your doctor and your doctor gives you pills. Healthy is you go to your doctor tells you, "Hey, you're doing pretty well. Well, I'll see you in a year. Keep doing what you're doing." That's healthy. That's
right.
actual freedom from the pharmaceutical companies. They get the biggest kickbacks from the government. There are billions and billions of dollars made off of just creating new vaccines
Mm,
annually that people don't know about. And that's outside of the pills that you see on TV that
right.
have, a list of maybe 20 different ailments that you can get from taking the pill. And I was like, well, what is it supposed to be saving you from? A headache? I could die, but I'm not going to have a headache. Like,
Right.
stop that. I'm a paralegal by trade, and I've worked for a small firm that did depositions on different medical devices and also pharmaceuticals. And the one thing I saw with the FDA that's consistent is all that company has to do is write a letter and say, well, we're going to make a better batch. Can we continue to make this? And the FDA goes, okay, as long as the next batch that comes out is better. But they didn't take any of the stuff off of the market that was
Right.
actually killing people and making them sick, because they're able to just write this letter. And I know a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? This is how it works.
Mm,
Okay. This is how it works. We are the business model. We keep the pharmaceutical companies in place.
yep.
And our government has a lot to do with that on the back end.
Yep.
And it isn't right. I want to see healthcare the way it should be. You should be able to go to a doctor if you need to go to a doctor. And between you and your doctor, not you, your doctor, and the insurance company,
Correct.
get a plan together. See, the insurance company is a middleman. And I'm like, what do you even do? And then how do you even tell people that they can't take certain medications and you're not a doctor, but
Right.
you're making medical decisions? Like, I want everybody put under investigation because, again, as a paralegal, I'm like, you're breaking the law. You're
Mm,
acting as a physician and you do not have a medical degree nor license, but you're acting as a medical physician in with impunity. So I'll call his initials B and G, and everybody knows what I'm talking about.
right. 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 Right.
And he came on television repeatedly over
Mm,
the past 3 years, still talking about, well, I think you should do this, and I think you should do that. Sir, that's advice.
right. But you can't
As a
give.
paralegal, I can't, if I say, okay, legally you should do this or do that, that's an unauthorized practice of law. So you're practicing medicine without a license. You are not
Mm,
a physician. You should not at any time ever give anyone any medical advice and say what they should or should not do ever at any time.
right.
He needs to be put under strict investigation for
Mm,
what has happened with just his pharmaceuticals.
right. Right.
So there has to be a point where in this society, because the government, I don't want the government involved in individuals' health care. What I would like to see is a straight payment system. So if I need to go to the doctor and my doctor is like, okay, this is how much I charge. Okay, I I pay taxes. If I have my medical taxes taken out, I should have a fund set up.
Hmm.
So just kind of like when you get a job and you decide, okay, I've got my healthcare, my HS, if I want to call it HCA, there's like a healthcare account on my
Yes.
little credit card, and
Healthcare
every
safe.
every month there's like a little bit of money that's put on my card
Right.
every month. So when I go to the doctor, I can pay for my visit. I can pay whatever copay that doctor charges, but it's between me and my doctor, not me, my doctor, and a third party
Right.
that's trying to determine my medical output. See, a lot of those insurance companies get paid on the back end from the government. They have contracts with the government. So they're making money from us on the front end and from the
Right.
government on the back end. And they
Hmm.
need to just be eliminated. And I know people would be like, but if we didn't have health insurance, what would we do? You would go straight to your doctor. Like
Yep.
I said,
And
if
pay.
you're if we're doing the tax structure that I would like, I know this is a segue, but I want to do a fair tax. So when you're paying for goods and services at the government level, it'd be 16% federal and 6 to 7% at the state level. So the state would collect their taxes, the federal government would collect their taxes. But if I'm going to my doctor, I'm paying my federal and my state. My doctor in turn has to, give that cut, whatever that is, to federal and state, and we're done.
Mm.
We're done. We're not having to go through a middleman to tell me, well, your insurance changed, so you can't see that doctor. Your
Mm.
insurance changed, so even though this was a good medication for you, you can no longer take it. We really have to look at what we have in place right now that's not working and make the adjustment and turn the corner, because if we keep going the way we are, we're definitely crash and burn as a country.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. I'm
It is.
sorry.
It is.
Look, we
Well,
can't keep going this way.
no, and I think we're already on. I think we're already on destination to crash. For those who, are paying attention, I think to me it looks like. Let's see if I got this. To me, um, what it looks like is you have two groups in this country. Three groups. Let's say three groups. One group is trying to sabotage the country. The other group is trying to save the country. And the third group in the middle thinks that both sides have best interest for the country. They're oblivious.
Mhm.
And that's what I've recognized. And if you really pay attention, you'll see, right? And you talked about it earlier about the extremes, like everything is so extreme.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a group trying to destroy the country, and I don't know what they're getting out of it. To me, they're like what do you call them? They're traitors, right? Like so they're really, I think I think they're gonna get a payout, right, for destroying the country. I think there's a bigger play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
What do they call those people who betray a country? There's like a name
They,
for it.
they call them traders.
Call them traitors, right? That was like a weird name. I don't know why I can't think of it. But let me pull this question up. I think this is a great question from Brahman. He says, how do you convince other politicians to come on board with your plans and changes? That's a good one.
It is.
How do you get them to come on board? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, obviously, you've got to have the conversation, and you've got to really impress upon them that there has to be a middle ground,
Mm,
right? We have to get back to civil discourse, and that's what we've gotten away from in this country. We've gotten more into ideologies and away from principle and integrity. There are
yeah.
people that strictly run on problems, and they will not solve those problems, and they run on them campaign after campaign, and the voter continues to put them in office. So
Mm,
it really comes back to the voters. So if we say, okay, you know what? We are not going to vote along with this person because they've been in Congress for 10 years and we know they're not going to fix anything. and you vote them out. Let's say you vote a whole block of them out. If
Right.
that happens to 10 politicians, they'll be like, okay, wait a minute.
Right.
Wait a minute. So yeah, it's difficult sometimes to get people on board.
Right.
He said it, the word treason,
Yeah,
on
treason.
board with your ideas, because each politician, they're trying to continue to get money and funds. They're trying to grease their skids once they're in. I hate to say it like that.
Yeah,
And
it's
they
true.
don't want to get on board with
Right.
fixing it. Their whole, if you really look at how our politicians work, they run on problems. They kick the can down the road, because as long as there's a problem, they can blame the other person.
True.
They can always escape blame, because they can say, well, we didn't have enough people on our side to push this through. And we do not hold them accountable as a society to say,
Yes.
if you don't do your job, you're out of here.
Correct. Correct.
So it really comes back to the citizens. I could sit and talk to politicians all day long, and they'll laugh at me. You know why? Because they're making their money. And they know all they have to do is go outside and tell people the sky is falling, and people will believe them. When people stop believing them and start voting them out, like really voting them out, like George Santos should not be in office right now. The man lied. I mean, not just lied, like committed crimes. And he's still there. He's still there. Like McCarthy's not going to get rid of him. Why? Because the seat is more important than integrity of our country. He has put the seat and the balance of what he feels is power. That's more important than saying, you know what, if you get to Congress and you do these things, you're out of here.
Right.
You're setting a very dangerous precedent when you allow somebody who's done what he's done to stay in office. And it's just not good.
And that goes for anybody, you know, and I think I always say the people have the power. I'm a firm believer in that. We have just given the power away out of laziness, out of ignorance, you know, and even within our own community, we don't hold politicians accountable. They play the same game. They vote down the list Democrat. They get nothing for their vote. And I'm an independent voter. I don't care about either side.
Right.
I vote based off of policy. I don't vote based off of a party or skin color or whatever. I just don't, you know, like I really look at what's being said and what's going on. So I'm big on preaching that to people. Listen, vote based off of your interests. What's important to you? Vote based on that.
Yeah.
You know, don't just throw it down the list simply because. And before I ask you another question, well, I was going to say, what is there any policy that you want to speak on specifically that's very passionate to you, that's important to you, that you want to touch on if we haven't touched on it yet?
Okay, well, there's two. The first one is HR 3617, and that one has to deal with actually legalizing marijuana at the federal level. Because we have over 35 states within the U.S. that have legalized marijuana at the state level, it needs to now be legalized at the federal level. The problem I have with HR 3617 is the fact that they're trying to redefine marijuana, and they're trying to figure out a way to monetize it at the federal level. I do not want that. I want people to be able to grow it in their backyard, just like you grow kale or you grow parsley, and that's it, right? Because you're going to make sure there's nothing in it. Like, I'm sorry. Whenever the government gets their hands on any type of food supply, it gets ruined. And then everybody's like 3 years later, oh, yeah, that could give you cancer. What?
The eyes falling out.
Right. It's like, we thought you were here to help us. It's like, no. It's on a list of narcotics, and all it has to be done is taken off the list. We do not need HR 3617 because each state, just like they have DUIs, just like they have their influence laws in their state, they have the ability to regulate this at the state level. It does not need to be at the federal level. And then it will actually take down the incarceration rate that we have, because there are some people that are disproportionately incarcerated because of marijuana. And it would also help with the pharmaceutical side too, because people use it for medicinal purposes. The other policy that I really want to push forward is reparations. I know that
Okay.
this has been a large conversation on both sides. There was actually an executive order 14089 that the Biden and Harris administration had signed. I'm still studying because I just found out about it a couple days ago. But it looks at, it's not reparations, but it could be like
Mhm.
reparations, but it actually is, looking at getting payment for individuals from slavery
Okay.
on one side of it, but also including African nations as well. So that's one side. And then what I'm looking at with reparations is I'm looking at, okay, the 40 acres and the mule. I'm coming more from the just
The original.
strictly
The original.
right,
Okay.
the original promise that was made and broken, putting the Freedmen Bank back in place, putting the Freedmen Bureaus back in place, and having it be lineage based. And
Okay.
so, with the bank, with the Freedmen Bank being back in place, and it's the money's not going to be disseminated to Wells Fargo, Chase banks, which are being eaten up, and the bank failures, so that's a whole nother thing. But really set up the protections, right? Really saying that, okay, we're not going to do CBDCs. We are going to make sure that there's a financial instrument on the NASDAQ to keep the Freedmen Bank going, that we will have an anti Black hate crime bill within the Reparations Act, because we've never had any type of anti Black hate crime bill since the slaves were freed after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the Civil War. And a lot of people kind of think, like, why are Black people still kind of catching it everywhere? And it's because there were no protections put in place. If there were
True.
protections put in place, we probably wouldn't see some of the atrocities that we saw shortly after the Emancipation Proclamation, where slaves were freed, but the atrocities that we still see today. I mean, Emmett Till, we're not that far removed.
Right.
So that was just one or two generations
It's
ago.
true. It's true.
So we can no longer stand to the side and say, oh, racism doesn't happen. It does. It happens in the Black community, it happens in the Asian community, it happens in the Latin community. But here's the difference: the Asian community, they have an anti-Asian hate crime bill.
Hmm.
There is a, it's not a Latin hate crime bill, but it does encompass more Pacific Islanders and
Mm.
people of Latin descent to make sure that they're protected. Now, we are all, I've heard it fly around, well, you can't have anything specific for a specific group of people. Well, we do have laws for specific groups of people. It's just that when those of chattel slavery ask for those protections, we're denied them, and we shouldn't be. And
Why
it's
is
time.
why do you think?
Well,
And
let's see.
it's Democrats that are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate because as I began to study, and if anybody's out there listening, please read From Here to Equality and the Black Tax. It kind of will open up your mind to why we're here. Because when slaves were freed, they were freed from the incarceration of slavery, but
Correct.
not from the treatment.
Yes.
So that's what we see going on today. So a lot of people will say, well, racism, doesn't exist, but it actually is institutional. And I've suffered from it. I've been called the N word by a child when I was a child. I've been called the N word by a professor when I was in high school. So
Hmm.
please don't tell me that it doesn't exist. With affirmative action, it was put in place to actually legislate people's feelings. Discrimination is a feeling.
Mm.
It is not something tangible that
True.
I can actually legislate. I can't stop you from being prejudiced. I can't really stop you from discriminating. But they
Correct.
actually had to write a law to make you stop treating people badly. When
Yep.
really, if they just put in place an anti Black hate crime bill, you don't need affirmative action after
Mm.
that. You know why? Because you'll actually treat people with respect and dignity, because it'll be like, oh, I can't treat you like that anymore. Oh, I can't just get over and do that because it's a federal crime. Yeah.
there needs
No.
there needs you. I think people forget how this thing works.
Yeah.
You have to you have to incentivize good behavior, and you have to discipline bad behavior. That's just the reality of life. If there's no consequences for one's actions that's inappropriate or against society's
Right.
rules and laws, then what is going to stop you from not doing it? It even comes with the argument, oh, we don't need the police. Okay, well, the criminals do, right? And so, and as citizens who are law abiding, there are always going to be people who are not law abiding. And then what do you
Yeah.
do for that? So, with that being said, there's a candidate, Vivek
Yes,
um,
Ramaswamy. I know you're talking about.
Ramaswamy.
Vivek.
I like him. I like him. Now, there are some things I don't agree with.
Mhm.
I think he's on this anti woke agenda thing. Cool.
Yes.
But he spoke about affirmative action. I think
Mhm.
he wants to get rid of it.
He does.
And my personal thing is, I think that affirmative action is necessary, unfortunately, because now if you want to tell me how you could do something better, I'm all ears. I'm always open to
Right.
something new. Is there
Mhm.
loopholes in affirmative action that needs to be addressed? Yes, I'm pretty sure. Is there things that we can do to maybe evolve it? Yes, I'm absolutely sure.
Mhm.
But it's there because unfortunately you cannot regulate people's hearts. You can't regulate their minds. And unfortunately, people are abusing their positions of power, and
Yeah.
they're purposely not allowing people of minorities, people of color. They're gender discriminating. They're racially. They're discriminating based off of age. So we do, as Black folks, we think affirmative action just belongs to us. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it belongs to
Mhm.
anybody who could be
Yeah.
discriminated against.
Very true.
So it's to protect those people. And
Mhm.
if you can't make a solid case as to why this person is qualified to do the job, even more qualified than the person you hired, and it come to find out that you discriminate against them and didn't give them
Yeah.
the job, that's a problem.
Yeah.
If people were honest and had integrity, there wouldn't be any need for affirmative action.
Nope.
So,
No.
so,
You're
I,
yeah, you're right.
yeah, so I disagree with him on that. I think he's out of touch on a lot of topics as it relates to um, being able to. I wouldn't say I said relate last time I was thinking about. I wouldn't say relate, but when you're not properly exposed to different cultures and the
Yeah.
historical experiences, not to say
Mhm.
he can't speak on it because that's what him
Yeah.
and Don got into it about. Uh,
Right.
I disagree with that. He can
Mhm.
speak on it. You properly challenge a person's talking points. If you
Yeah.
disagree with me and
Right.
my stance on something,
Yeah.
then debate me on it. Don't tell me
Right.
because the color of my skin or because
Mhm.
my parents are from somewhere else that I'm not qualified to speak.
Right.
Right? I
Right.
think that he might. I think he'd be open for the conversation, but I think
Mhm.
not understanding that he may judge people based on their merit, but
Right.
someone else might not. And
Right.
sometimes when you try to look at the world through your own good heart and your
Yeah.
own integrity, you
It's totally
forget,
different.
right? You forget other people don't have that.
No, but not at all. Not at
Not
all.
at all. And
Not at
and
all.
and there lies the issue. So
Mhm.
so I would be interesting to hear a debate. I would be interested to hear you and him debate the
Oh,
idea of
I'd welcome it.
yeah.
Actually would love to hear him talk to Judge Brown about
Mm,
affirmative action because that's actually somebody who lived through it. So it's
yeah,
it's different when we talk about it because
correct.
we're the recipients on the
Correct.
good end of it, even though we might suffer on the bad end. But Judge Brown, he
Lived it.
lived through it,
Lived it. Yeah,
right? He actually walked in those shoes, and he
correct.
can tell you about when it happened and why it happened. And he was in a Twitter space the other night, and he was the short time I was in there, he was talking about how when he was in law school, how they actually debated affirmative action to see how it could be equally applied or unequally applied.
Mm,
The biggest problem when affirmative action came around, a lot of people, you think about it, it was Brown versus the Board of Education, where you're trying to legislate, segregation, and you're trying to, you know, make sure that everybody's kind of mixed, and black kids can go to school with white kids. So the problem that we've had is after slavery, there were no protections for emancipated slaves. So
correct.
you don't have anybody being held accountable for killing people after they've been freed, for burning down their towns,
Mm-hmm.
for, doing these atrocities. You actually don't hold anybody accountable. You lift them up for it, and you make them actual, politicians and governors to govern these people
Mm-hmm.
after you've killed them. And then we have to put a law in place that says, hey, now we need to integrate, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to not be a segregated society, but you've built up generations thinking it's okay
Right.
to look down upon and kill these very people. And I'm not saying everybody had that same heart, but the majority of people did. And it's because they got away with atrocities with impunity. And no one was held accountable.
That's very
Again,
true.
it comes back to accountability.
I,
That's
I
it.
Yeah, let's dive deeper into the reparations conversation. And real quick, we had two questions. Let me get to this
Okay.
one first. Broken Dusty, shout out to you. He says, what is affirmative action? Does it only apply to state colleges or something else? Um,
So, on the short, affirmative action was put in place to make sure that individuals were not discriminated against based on their race, age, um, ethnicity, because sometimes ethnicity can be different from race, right? Like,
right.
I'm an American, and your relatives are from Jamaica. So, so no one can discriminate against you because you're from Jamaica, and nobody can discriminate against me because I'm from South Bend, Indiana. And further to that, right, we've got gender. If you're male or if you're female, or if
Right.
you have blonde hair or brown hair, it basically says the best person for the job with merit should get the job. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you hire so many people that don't look like other people. You have quotas.
That's
And
true.
that's the problem that people have with affirmative
Okay.
action.
Okay.
That's the crust of the matter. And so that's what Vivek is looking at. And so when you talk about schools and you say, okay, we need a certain percentage of blacks, whites, Island Pacificers, Island Pacific, Latin, and you're like, then it's more of a numbers game. Well, where's the merit? Where are the people that actually should be there, not based on the color of their skin at all
Right.
or their
Right.
gender, but based on their merit? If they have the grades, if they have the skill set to be in that college, that's what should happen. And so we have HBCUs because black
Correct.
children were not allowed to go to college
Right.
with
College.
white children, so they made their own colleges over here. So again, it comes back to merit. But is somebody going to be honest about that? And they had to again legislate people's feelings to
Yeah.
make sure that they hit the quotas. And so I can understand Vivek's the downside, right? I can understand him
Absolutely.
not wanting that part of it and wanting it to be based on merit.
Well, I agree on that though.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's his stance, I agree 100%. I think you can't. I agree with, okay, let's make sure you're giving the percentage. And I've realized from doing a lot of research with data and stuff that, we're approximately 13-14% of the population, African Americans.
Right.
And we need to make sure we're 14% or more in every industry. That's how I look at it. We need to whatever my vision for these conversations and my vision and what I wish for this country is that we are represented in every profession in every area, and it needs to reflect our percentage of our population size. So for example, in policing, we represent like 11% of the
Mm-hmm.
police force. So you're talking about approximately, I want to say, is it about 700,000
Mm-hmm.
police officers patrol this country, right?
Wow.
So out of 700,000, approximately 11% are African American, right? So when you look at, I think it's always a good number when you can reflect your population size because it's
Mm-hmm.
realistic. The
Right.
reality is that there's more white people in this country than black people. So you're not going to have a 50-50 police force, right?
Right. Right.
So you want it does need to be proportionate. So when you look at attorneys and judges, well,
Mm-hmm.
attorneys, and obviously you got to be an attorney before you can be a judge, and you know,
Right.
uh, according to the American Bar Association,
Hmm.
African Americans only make up approximately like 4%.
Yeah.
So we are lacking severely in that area, in that profession. We
Hmm.
want to be closer to what? 12, 13, 14%.
Right.
I think that's always a healthy number. I like to look at our representation in different professions.
Yeah.
Um, and that gives you an idea of where we need to kind of focus
Yeah.
and inspire. I was looking, I think Charles Barkley, just a little side note. I think he was,
Hmm.
and I wanted to do a video, and I'm working on this thing, but he made a statement where he went to an all-white school to speak. He was speaking at
Okay.
a career day, and he said, "Hey, I was at an all-white school, and I asked the kids, and it's one of the things I've done plenty of career days, and this is what you always is the number one question you ask: What do you want to be when you grow up, right?"
Right. Of
And
course.
so this is Charles Barkley. The kids know who he is,
Wow.
and they said, in this white school, predominantly white school, he said the kids they were saying, "Hey, I want to be an engineer. I want to be a
Hmm.
lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I
Right.
want to be I don't know, a diver. I want to,
Right.
whatever, sail the world." He
Right.
said, but when he goes to black schools, predominantly black
Hmm.
schools, he
Yeah.
said the overwhelming majority of kids, if not 99% of the kids, say they want to be entertainers, rappers, and
Hmm.
athletes.
Yeah.
You know,
It's what they're exposed to.
I agree.
Hmm.
And so there's something there that needs to be addressed, right?
Yeah.
Within our own culture in order to
Yeah.
kind of inspire and push and cultivate, us to kind of dive into all these. We're needed everywhere.
Oh yeah.
We're not court jesters, you know what I mean? We're not here for
No.
the sake of people's entertainment.
No. They're
Um,
not.
and then the reality of what's the percentage that's going to get to that job, right? Who's going to
Hmm.
be that? Some of us physically can't be a basketball player because you're not you're 5'3", you're 5'5".
It's not going to happen.
It
Not
ain't gonna happen.
everybody's Spud Webb. Not
There
everybody's
you
Spud.
go. So let me get this next question, and then I want to get back into reparations because I got some questions
Okay.
for you.
Okay.
All right, let me see. Where was it? Okay, Lisa. Shout out to Lisa, member of the channel. Thank you, Lisa. Shout out to Lisa.
Yay.
How do you rebuild trust with voters? Um,
Mm.
what are your thoughts on that? That's a good question.
That is a loaded question.
Yeah, people are scoring.
Because it's hard, right? Because at the federal level, you cannot dictate to the states how they handle their
True.
voter rolls, how they handle their voting procedures.
Hmm.
And the best thing that you can do is just say, we can work together to ensure that if there's a recall to a vote and give ideas for voting. I would like to be able to just vote at home from my phone. But
Mm,
unfortunately, because we live in a society where everybody wants to cheat and get over and not be have really any integrity,
correct.
you're going
Right.
to get people that are probably sitting at home with 10 phones that are
Ooh,
voting 10 times under
that's
10 different names.
right.
So can we get to a point where we have so much you know, cybersecurity and everything? It's like, okay, can I just file my IP address and you know that it's me coming from this IP address because I registered with it with my phone and I have I want to say it's that the mimic or IMMI number from my phone, and you have this information with my state representative, so the vote's me. You know that I'm alive. But like I said, again, it comes back to integrity. There's been suggestions of paper voting, maybe, but still, you can rig the system there and do more paper
Oh,
votes than
yes.
before. So it really comes back to the integrity of our voting system. Are our politicians really going to say, okay, we're going to stand up, we're going to have integrity, we're not going to cheat, we're not going to put poster boards over windows where you've seen the videos. It's crazy. It was
Yeah,
crazy. I was like,
yeah,
what are we doing as a society
man.
when there are third world countries that can have elections, clean, clear, fair elections, but not here? And we have technology. Like, what
Childish.
are we doing? We
Childish.
need to get back to being adults,
Yes.
having integrity. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. Better luck next time.
That's it. Yeah.
So with the voters,
Mm.
I definitely would say, get out and register people to vote. Get involved with your state and know that your state laws. Like here in Georgia, there's something that I'm going to be petitioning for our next election because in SB 201, there's a reference there for people that are elderly or handicapped, where only certain individuals can process their absentee ballot on their behalf.
Hmm.
They excluded a cousin. So if you're a cousin to somebody and they don't have any other living relatives and they don't have a caretaker, I don't know who can help them because the law is written so specifically. So I definitely would say get involved with your state representative at the voter registration level and at the voter level so that you're one of the people that can see behind the scenes. Well, how are these things counted? And
Yeah.
be that person that stands up to have that integrity because that's what's needed. We need people, actual grassroots on the ground that are going to hold other people accountable
Yeah.
because we can't just sit back anymore and say, oh, somebody else will do it. We don't have that luxury anymore. Not if we
No,
want
we
it
do
done.
not. No, we don't. We don't.
Yeah.
And and another thing too, we don't have that luxury in our community specifically. We have
No.
to start putting our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
And if you're not putting your money behind a candidate who is actually fighting for the things and the policies that would make your local, your city, your state where it needs to be, even on your federal policies and things like if you're not really putting your money and your interest back in them, you're essentially stabbing and cutting yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. I love that. That's what at Michi's event that was very echoed. It was
Yes.
mentioned a lot, and
Yeah.
I appreciated the balance perspective. Is that we don't care who you vote for. Make sure you intentionally understand who this person is, what they
Mhm.
stand for, and what they are trying to do, and you
Yep.
vote based off of that. Stop. Okay, right? Am I
Did I
right?
vote? If I did.
Am I good? Is it in? Is it in? And then turn around and complain when things don't go the way you want it to go, or
Yeah.
police corruption, or the
Yeah.
bad judge, or the bad prosecutor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your roads aren't getting fixed, the schools aren't getting repaired. There's no funding that's come, and it's like, well, who? I debate people on here all the time who want to talk to me about white supremacy and things like
Mhm.
that, and I'm all fair. But the reality is, a lot of times in these communities, it's us in these positions that
Yeah.
you voted for. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't want to take the accountability. And I asked them, hey, who's your superintendent? Who's your
Mhm.
prosecutor? Who's your governor? I don't know who the governor is. Some people, we don't even know. We're so ignorant to politics, to our own demise. And
Yeah.
so we complain, I get it. We're angry, I get it, but we're uneducated intentionally, because we can go online and look up some stuff we want to look up.
Yeah.
We know how to invest in energy and things, and I'm not saying that there are not bad actors. I'm saying that we have to take the initiative. It
Yeah.
is our right to take the initiative. People have died for the right for us to take the
Yeah.
initiative to do these things. So I want to the affirmative action thing, and I think,
Mhm.
we talk about it being merit based. It absolutely has to be merit based.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and again, this argument was made. You're putting kids in these Harvards, these Ivy League schools, and they didn't have the grades or the skill sets to be there. Technically, it's not that they don't belong in college, but they
Right.
they, they keep up with the pace of the curriculum, and they end up flunking out. So it's
Yeah.
almost like you do them a disservice anyways. And so
Mhm.
I just wanted to say that I think the merit based thing absolutely needs to be there. Though the
Yeah.
seats are available, you still have to earn your way in there. So
Yeah.
yes, the seat is there, but you still have to do what's necessary to get in there. So
Yeah.
the door's there, the seat is there. Doesn't mean
Mhm.
that you just walk in without applying, walk in without the grades, walk in without the
Yeah.
right test scores. So I
Yeah.
agree with them there. So I'm about to look into that some more because I'm curious.
Yeah. And to
Um,
that, I don't want everybody to think that you have to go to college to be successful. There have been
Right.
several people within our history, they didn't have college and they were very successful. So college isn't the path for everybody, but it does still come back to the merit based,
Yeah.
right? Because, I don't know if anybody here has ever had their nails done, but if you go to a nail shop, you're not going to see anybody that looks like other people. And I'll leave it at that. But it's okay,
Right.
right? Because they've cornered the market on it. But why is it okay?
Correct.
Right?
And
And nobody and no one messes with the
nope.
nail shop,
Nope.
right? Saying, well, you have to do things because they are a small business. They can hire who they want,
Yep.
how they want to do things. And so they have those freedoms. But what we shouldn't do is if somebody of another nationality wants to do the same thing, don't get in their face.
There you
Right?
go.
Because if we're gonna, right, so we can't allow one group to do it, and then we have another group over here, and they want everybody to look like them over here, and say, well, you're no, they're not. Stop that! Stop that!
Yeah.
Don't have the double standard. If
Mm.
you're either gonna do it or you're not, you're gonna imply it everywhere or you're not.
Mm.
But don't be disingenuous.
I don't like the
That's
hypocrisy.
me.
Listen, listen. I went to war a couple weeks ago over hypocrisy. I don't like it. I don't like it. I had to call out some hypocrisy over here on this channel and the stuff that was
Okay.
going on. And I don't like hypocrisy. And we do it. We are
Oh
quick
yeah.
to and I say it all the time that if we're not careful, we start sounding and acting like the same people we are calling racist. We start moving like them, acting like them, complaining and doing things like that. We start really creating turning into what we complain about. And you have to be careful. You absolutely got to be careful. And so what applies to them also applies to us. And that's how you keep things equitable. So with reparations. Now, my thing is, so I'm looking to debate a guy.
Okay.
who is who is a known racist. I plan on bringing him over to the channel.
Okay.
And having a discussion with him about a couple things. But he also, unlike a lot of people say that don't agree with reparations. I've heard a guy who's a political activist, I guess. I don't know what like a pundit or whatever. And he's on social media and he goes around, he talks about different things. And I heard him he was debating on reparations. He was on a college campus, white guy.
Okay.
And he said their argument for not wanting reparations. Now, my argument with reparations is totally different. It's more so about, again, like what we spoke about earlier, is you can tell me the destination, but you can't show me how to get there, right? The issue, and I'll just say the issue with reparations, as we know that it stands, is that there are some people who are trying to say the logistics is an issue, right? Some people say, hey, we agree with it. I agree with it, but the logistics, right? People are saying the logistics is the problem.
Right.
How do you make it work? What does that look like, right? And there are people who put it together. They've investigated. They've got it organized. They're like, hey, listen, we just need you to cut the check, and we can put it all together.
Right.
Some people just want money. Some people just like, man, just give me a couple million, whatever the millions, how it breaks down, give it to me, and I'll go about my business. I don't care about what other brothers do about these. Let me do this. Reparations, I believe, needs to be multifaceted. And to your point, because of the historical damage, it didn't stop at slavery. It's one thing if it wasn't chattel slavery, it was just regular basic slavery, and it ended. And we're like, all right, welcome to society, you guys. Our bad. We got a little carried away.
Right.
And then everybody was doing what they were doing. Black people managed to be very successful after slavery, even despite the circumstances and the oppression and the systemic racism, they were still doing great. So if they weren't if this country did not have that oppressive hand on Black Americans, I believe we'd probably be 50% of the population. We'd be extremely successful. We're extremely talented. The sky would be the limit. But because there was a destruction of our economy, there was a destruction of homes repeatedly, and there was terrorism within from whites, from KKK and things like that. There was just a lot going on, as we know the story.
Yeah.
That prevented that growth, that prevented that economic growth consistent. So there
Yes.
was always these attacks. So, and that was government funded, it was government approved, and
Yeah.
that's a problem. That violated the constitutions of this country, and
Right.
it was intentionally done, and the government has to pay for that.
Yeah.
So when I hear people make the argument that we today aren't responsible from people of yesterday, which I
Mhm.
agree 100%.
Right.
You, the people, are not the government, right?
Right.
And so
Exactly.
the government owns the debt. You simply just invest into the country with your taxes. But
Right.
the government as an entity
Mhm.
owes the debt,
Yeah.
not you as the citizen, right? Because quite frankly, if you really think about it, the way Biden just shipped over 70 plus $billion to Ukraine, one
Mhm.
could argue, right? Uh,
Yeah.
sir, you have no business doing that. You got plenty of debt that you need to take care of over here before you start shipping money over to everybody else and their mama.
Mhm.
Every year, our government spends over $300 billion on the military.
Yes.
You look at like, listen, we can cut back on some of the there's the money's here to pay the
Yes.
debt for reparations, right? Let's just be
Mhm.
clear on that. The money's
Yes.
here. So when people
Yeah.
make this argument, why should I be punished? White Americans be punished for
Mhm.
something they did not do. Bless your
Right.
heart. I understand how you feel. This ain't
Mhm.
got nothing to do with you, player. This has everything to do with the government, the entity of this
Yeah.
government. And so that is something that I think people misunderstand. And I wish I would love to. Now, listen, I have my feelings about reparations. I understand it's a debt that needs to be paid.
Mhm.
I'm more so about the logistics and how it works and what's in the best interest to make sure you get the most out of it consistently, generation after generation, so that it
Right.
repairs properly. Some people just want the check, but there
Mhm.
needs proper way to
Exactly.
implement it so it
Yes.
naturally fixes itself, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so with that being said, I like how you say you like to keep it back to the 40 acres and a mule. What is the original agreement?
Mhm.
I like that. So explain to me what your thoughts on that. How do you then factor in the black codes, the systemic oppression, Jim
Mhm.
Crow? How do you then factor that into reparations? Because that was also uh, government not investing in interest in protecting black citizens, and the government funding their police force
Mhm.
as well as the FBI to
Yeah.
oppress Black Americans. So how do you then also you factor in the cost of slavery, which is 40 acres and a mule,
Mhm.
the interest of that after reneging on that, because I think it was
Right.
President Andrew who snatched that back and was like, nah, we
Yeah.
ain't do that.
Right.
And then compounding the other attacks and oppression over time. How do
Yeah.
you what does that look like in your
Right.
opinion?
Yes. Now, I don't have an exact number, and that's why I
Right.
recommended everybody read From Here to Equality and also
Mhm.
The Black Tax, because they have thrown out some figures within that book. So I would definitely rely on the sources and the individuals that put that together. I know Dr. Claude Anderson, he's
Yeah.
got studies on it,
Yeah.
and Dr. Boyce Watkins, and get their input. But this is why I wanted to do a reparations act
Okay.
similar to the Federal Reserve Act, so that we can actually do more than just get cut a check. We can actually look at repair. And
Yes.
within that act, that's why I want the anti-black hate crime bill, because just because you get the money, you need the protections behind the money. And this is where
Mhm.
they failed when the slaves were emancipated. There were no protections put in place after you separated these vulnerable people. You left them vulnerable. And not only did you leave them vulnerable, you terrorized them
Mm.
after the fact
After the fact.
for years, up until over a century. You terrorized the individuals that were freed from slavery, so that money and that repair could come from what is called a federal judgment fund. And anybody can look it up, it's free information. And out of this fund is an endless resource of money, which actually houses the different instances within our federal government that have occurred where they need to pay back restitution for those instances. So you might see things from HUD in there. You may see things from Indians that are Native Americans in there. And again, other atrocities that have happened that the federal government owes. Now, this is completely separate from our budget. So I'm looking to take reparations out of there and house reparations there
Mm,
because it is an endless source of money that does not affect taxes. So it will not affect those who said, hey, this isn't my fault. You're right, it's not your fault. It does go back to the federal government that did not do what it should have done, which was the promise of 40 acres and a mule
right.
and the promise of protections. So you didn't do those two things. Also, under the Federal Reserve, under the Act for reparations, I want to put the Freedmen Bureaus back in place. So
Okay.
individuals, if they need counseling on how to start a business or financing, just different things that they want to put in place, maybe an insurance policy, maybe an IRA account, and just knowing how to build that generational wealth within their family, have these bureaus around the country that people can go to because unfortunately the banking system has even failed Black Americans and even those that came from the Caribbean and different parts of the world that do have brown skin. They were disproportionately treated by JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo and charged interest rates far above other nationalities at a disproportionate rate and maybe not even given loans at all to start businesses or buy cars or buy homes. So, there's just, I don't want to say so many things, but it all comes back to repair and
Yes.
making sure under this Federal Reserve Act in there, and I do want others' input on it because it needs to be something that we roll out and it's not just about money. But like I said, there needs to be an instrument on the NASDAQ. So
Mm,
these funds are perpetual and they actually build generational wealth. That it's not
right.
just a check that gets cut and goes away.
Correct.
And that's
Correct.
why I said it has to be an act
Mm,
within the foundation of our laws. Just like we have the Federal Reserve, we need a reparations act that is solidified. So when my grandson is 51, he's not sitting back having the same conversation that I'm having right
there you go.
now.
Well said. I have something I want to put up. I think that let me use that because I think that
Yeah.
that deserves. I would say and I know we got to wrap up but let me I want to say this yes, there are a lot of people that need to be held accountable. There are, insurance companies that are still out today,
Mhm.
shipping companies. There are, who was it that I saw? Um, there are a lot of companies that are existing today that participated in some form of fashion in facilitating and maintaining slavery that
Yeah.
need to be addressed.
Mhm.
Even I think even Africa, there might needs to be some discussions with West Africa and those countries who participated with that. There needs to be some type of something there. I don't know
Mhm.
what that looks like. I'm just saying there needs to be a lot of people involved. And people forget that there was a triangle trade, right? They hit the Caribbean, they hit
Yeah.
and they hit the U.S. So it's
Yeah.
there's a lot. This is a multifaceted puzzle, and there's a lot that can be done in creating this reparations package,
Mhm.
and infrastructure, education,
Mhm.
um, and financial literacy. A
Yes.
lot of our schools in the inner city are uh, it's trash. It's
Yeah.
completely trash. And some of that money, well, the money needs to, you're talking about repairing these cities,
Yeah.
black communities where they've been just infested with crime and drug abuse. We know
Mhm.
where that came from, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you helping correct culture?
Mhm.
Our culture has been contaminated with a lot of wicked things that aren't us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you talk about that, fixing broken homes, kind of
Mhm.
encouraging nuclear families again,
Yeah.
educating what that looks like. So there is a lot of hands-on activities that need to take place
Yeah.
outside of cutting a check.
Mhm.
And it's almost like you could almost argue that you would have to, in a sense, reprogram, right?
Yeah.
and you know,
That's
and
why I want the Freedmen bureaus there. And when I say that, I know a lot of people, they think about the NAACP and they think about the Urban League. And
right.
to that, I would say these organizations have been around longer than I've been alive. And what have they truly done? So, no,
No,
we
yeah,
actually need freedmen bureaus that are in these places and spaces, to your point, help. But a lot of these cities, sometimes the way they're governed,
yes,
it's still disseminated from
yeah,
sometimes people that look like us,
correct.
unfortunately, that would
Yeah.
rather put the money in their pocket as
Mm,
opposed to it being put back in the city. I mean, I live here in Georgia and I can go to Alpharetta and Johns Creek and it looks beautiful, but then I
yep,
can go to parts of Decatur where it looks like a bomb went off and I'm like,
yep.
what happened? And
What
then
are they
go up the street from there and go by St. Agnes and I'm like, it's beautiful over here. Like, what
Yep.
is happening? There
Mm-hmm.
isn't proper governing going on
Correct.
at the local level.
That's
And that
correct.
needs to be fixed. So, again, when anybody's voting, you've got to vote more than just the people that are there. Vote for who's actually going to get it done. And if you see people in there that aren't getting it done, don't give them any more chances. You're fired.
And,
You've got to
and
go.
yeah, and that's and I feel like with reparations, there needs to be some demands that are again on a a level of dictatorship to where it's I understand this is a local level, but this is not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
is how it's going to be done.
It's,
This is
yeah.
what's required.
Yeah.
You know,
The
I have a
requirements along with it.
yeah, there's requirements that are non-negotiable.
Yeah.
These schools will be fixed, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
these cities will be rebuilt. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things that are just not going to be negotiable. The
Yeah.
money's going to go where it's going to have proper people investigating and making sure that these people who are contracted to do the work are doing the work.
Yeah.
And you need people on the team for reparations who are going to be like actually implementing these things and make sure
Yeah.
holding people accountable that they are watching and overseeing the process because folks will siphon the money in their pockets and it's
Yeah.
sad but you
Yeah.
gotta have that, you gotta have
Mm-hmm.
all eyes on it. And I would focus on one city. I would try to focus on one city. We're gonna rebuild one at a time. And even like schools, I have a vision for schools where we need equal amount of black men, teachers
Mm-hmm.
teaching in schools. And
Yeah.
I even thought about, segregating the boys and the girls. I like to look at how other countries do it and why it's successful
Yeah.
and take what's beneficial and make sure we apply it.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a militant way that we bring about change within our own community. And
Yeah.
some things we're not going to like, but it's absolutely necessary for us to do.
Yeah.
Like removing a lot of these businesses that don't belong to black people out of black community. Like there's just certain things that
I talked about that in my Twitter space. I was like, why are 80% of the businesses in
God,
black neighborhoods, they don't look like the people that live there?
you
Why
got to
not?
starve them out.
Why is that?
Yep.
You
No.
know, why is
Part of
that? It's like, yeah,
group
it should be
economics.
a reserve. It should be the reverse because it was that way at one point.
Yes.
Where did we lose our way?
Yes. Well, and I'm a firm believer you gotta remove everybody out and we gotta start over respectfully. Just like when you said close the border for 10 years, in my mind, I'm like, it's so funny because my same process is like we need to close black community for 10 years.
Yeah.
And remove all the poison.
Yeah.
Hey, nail shop, hey, beauty supply store, hey, chicken shop, hey, laundromat and alcohol store, hey, strip clubs. I'm sorry, with all due respect, McDonald's, y'all, we're gonna have to. We're purging right now. We're
Yeah.
gonna purge you up out of our communities, and
Yeah.
then we're gonna build up the people who want to be nail techs and start a nail business,
Yeah.
beauty supply stores. We have to recapture
Yeah.
businesses. You think about shout out to our sisters, black women. Y'all spend 20, 30 something billion a year on
Look, yes,
listen,
we do.
and we own like 2% of the market share.
Yeah.
There's no way. You got to starve those. I'm a firm believer. You have to starve them out. And it's not saying we don't want you. We'll let you back in after we reestablish
Yeah,
ourselves.
and it's hard when it comes to the hair because it's actually deeper than that because they also own the supply chain.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
they don't even sell
No,
to
they don't say
certain beauty supplies. I
on
remember
purpose.
going to a beauty supply. I want to say
Hmm.
she was located near Lawrenceville,
Hmm.
and she wasn't harassed necessarily, but she had somebody constantly trying to buy her shop, and she was like, I'm not going to sell to you. And so they tried to mess with her supply chain because she
Yes.
would not sell her shop. And she was like, leave me alone. I'm just trying to, be here in
Right.
my community
Yes.
and support my community because they support me. Why are you harassing
Listen,
me?
back when your boy had something up top, let me tell you. I remember speaking to a lady, and she was black owned beauty supply store.
Okay.
And I had stumbled upon her because I was like, I gotta get some, back when I had waves, I was looking for some
Right.
wave grease.
Okay.
And I said, damn, the wave grease is about $10, $15 up in here. What's going on? And she said, listen, the prices are a little higher because they purposely charge me more wholesale product.
Yeah.
Wholesale prices are higher for me, but they don't do that for other Asian
No.
vendors and other Asian
Mm-mm.
stores. And
Yeah.
so they do that to purposely choke me out of the business.
Yeah.
It's dirty. And
Yeah.
so again, we, we have to reclaim our glory.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's honestly, and it's no disrespect to, I love all people,
Hmm.
but we have to reclaim our glory, and that helps us become competitive
Hmm.
and here and internationally. And so once we get that back, then if you want to visit, hair and weave salon owned by, Koreans or the Vietnamese, or whoever, that's
Hmm.
fine. But we also have options that are black. And we're
Yeah.
treated with respect, and we're treated respectfully within the business.
Right.
And
Right.
until we level set, we don't really need to be supporting any other businesses within our community if it's not black owned. And that's
Yeah.
just, and then you have people who are selling us food, selling us alcohol, and their
Hmm.
religion doesn't even allow them to eat or drink that stuff.
Right.
So, it's like we got to get to a point where we take back pride
Hmm.
in ourselves and pride in our businesses, and we have
Yeah.
to be vigilant and militant to change this thing around. And if you're not willing to do that, then we're going to still suffer, right? So, um,
Unfortunately.
unfortunately. So let me get this last question in for you, and then I know we got to shut down. And I'm gonna get your
Okay.
final thought. So Kuya says one hurdle is 31 trillion national debt. How do you pay for reparation? Where does the money come from?
Oh, okay. Well, I just stated the money would come from a judgment fund, and the judgment fund is actually the United States has an unlimited source of funds that does not touch taxes. It does not touch the budget that we have. Now, I know other people out there will be like, well, why do we have debt? Why does it even exist?
Right.
All right. So unfortunately, I don't want to say it's the games that people play, but it is, right? Because we have lended ourselves out to other countries. That's where
Hmm.
some of our debt comes from. Now, Rand Paul, he actually had the penny method where he was saying, if we take a penny from, certain budgets and we allocate this money over the course of so many years, we'd be completely out of debt and we wouldn't have any debt on our books. So we have to look at different strategies to get out
Yes.
of debt. But reparations would come from the judgment fund because it is classified as a casualty against the government. So it would actually be looked at as the way they had treated the Native Americans and they settled their case with the Native Americans. That actually comes out of the judgment fund.
Hmm.
So any descendants that were, attached to of their forefathers, they can actually apply for those funds through the judgment fund. It's completely separate. And that's how reparations would be. But that would just be for the money part. Like I said, we need a reparations act to be inclusive because it can't just be about the money. It's got to be
Correct.
about protections. It's got to be about rebuilding the community. It's got
Yes.
to be about education,
Yep.
financial education, housing education, just your regular going through school education, medical. So it's more than just money because I know a lot of people say, well, just I want the check. No, it's not just about the check. It
Mm.
really, really isn't about the check because we throw money at everything.
Yeah.
and what is getting done. I
I
mean,
think.
let's see. T. Jakes, I think he's getting $1 billion for a project. Now, please understand that anytime anybody gets money for any charitable organization, they are only required to use 25% of those actual funds to get their project done. So the other 75% they can have in administrative costs.
Right.
And that's okay. I just want everybody out there to know that that is okay. That's
Right.
the litmus, right? It's
Right.
only 25% is required. You have to at least do that, but you can keep the rest in administrative costs. So you can have these wonderful, because everybody was like, why do these organizations have beautiful offices? Because the money is not going to what they're asking the money to go for.
Shout
That's
out to
why.
BLM. Yeah, BLM pulled it off. They,
They did.
oh, $1 million in marketing expense, $1 million in security. Like
Mhm.
what?
Right. Why isn't this money going to people? And why are you telling our black men that they shouldn't even be men? Like, what are we
Ooh,
doing? What are
we
we
doing.
doing? I'm
Mm,
sorry. Nope.
mm, mm,
I
mm,
wasn't on
mm.
board with that one. I was like, what are y'all doing?
I s- they
Y'all
started
ain't
off
helping
good.
anybody.
Yeah,
You're not even
they
helping anybody.
no, it wasn't. They started off good, and then their actions weren't matching their slogan,
No.
and you
No.
know, and some people picked up on it early, and some people waited to the last minute. We can't
Yeah.
be a community that's easily manipulated and
Yeah.
fooled like that
Yeah.
because we're so emotionally invested in solving the problem.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so um, Mr. I listen. I have enjoyed this conversation,
Oh,
and
good.
it truly honor and appreciate you making time to come speak to us and share your
Of
thoughts.
course.
We absolutely want to support you in any way that we can.
Yeah.
Tell the people how they can find you, and then let me get your closing statement for us.
Yes. So you can definitely find me at nicholsforpresident.org. And you can also log into nicholsforpresident.com. They point towards the same website. I know a lot of people say, well, why do you have two web addresses? Mainly because, unfortunately, there are people out there that can try to fake to be you. And it's usually good to have a.com and a.org that point towards the same portal. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gab, Getter, 6 zeros, social with an X, and also HBCC. And there's another channel called the Back Room, which is a new social media black owned company. So I'm trying to make sure that, and also fan base. Sorry, I left out fan base, but just making sure that I am supporting the larger platforms, but also the upcoming platforms. And that's another thing that we have to do just as a people, period, regardless of your skin color, but definitely as Black people, we want to support the up and coming businesses that are out there.
Absolutely,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Listen, thank you again. And anytime you want to come back and have conversations, you are always more
Thank
than welcome.
you.
And I think it'd be cool because you're my first. Well, we won't see you're my first. You're my second political person.
Okay.
Angela Stanton came over. We were talking about.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Yes,
we had
he's
a
great.
chance. We had a chance to talk about during the Roe v. Wade and Supreme
Okay.
Court decision with the
Yeah.
abortions and things like that. So it's cool. Now I have another political voice to bring onto the channel. So if you ever want to come over and you want to debate some stuff, we can talk about some things and
Thank
share
you.
with us your
Thank you.
journey as things go on. Please
Thank
just
you.
reach out to me. You know.
Will do. Will do.
All right. I
Okay.
thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. You too. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome sauce. Listen, that was dope. That was dope. I really enjoyed that. You know, I have a lot more research to do. I think, you know, she really shared a lot of information in the books, as well as some strategies, some things that I didn't think about. One thing I should have asked her, but next time we got time. I want to talk to her about what her thoughts are on police reform, and the kind of what that looks like to her. So, you know, that's always one of those things too. Is it's a hot topic, you know, when it comes to politics and state, local, federal, police. You know, My goal, you guys, my vision is to share my ideas in regards to police reform. And based on my experience and my understanding of the problem, um, I guess I can move this down now. Let's, all right. So my idea is to be able to actually share those things with people who are doing the work in that area, that arena. I think that's so important because unfortunately, guys, everybody can't be an expert at everything. I'm not holding up a sign. I'm not marching down nobody's street. I have no desire to run for political office, but I can lend my wisdom. I can lend my education, my knowledge, my heart, my integrity to someone who is going to push a policy that will make a difference, that would have a real impact on the criminal justice system and then even policing, and a consultant, if you will. My vision is to see that things are done and that this profession evolves into the profession it was always meant to be, supposed to be. And so that's my vision. I want to be able to share that with the world. So this was good. So you guys, listen, please, by all means, go and support. Go to her website. You see the website down at the bottom here. Join her mailing list so you get updates on her progress and things like that. Share her journey, share her story, you guys. This is important. Again, we need to get behind people who share the ideas and the policies that we want and want to bring about the change that we desire. Uplift these people. Keep them in your prayers. It's not easy. It's not easy being a person who's serving the public. Believe it or not, right? It's not easy. So, with that being said, you guys, I hope you had a great time. Thank you so much for those who've donated and supported tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Please like, comment, and share this video for those. I know there's a lot of people who always catch my videos on the back end. So thank you. You guys stay tuned. I will be interviewing Judge Joe Brown. I'm super excited about that. So stay tuned for how that goes down. Crazy Joe Brown. This brother here is amazing, great speaker, a lot of wisdom. So I'm super excited for that. What else? I think that's it. Any questions, comments? Please leave them in the comment section of the video. Thank you so much to my moderators, you guys. I really, really appreciate you guys. Know I could not do this without you. And with that being said, let these truths find you where the lies have left you. Good night and God bless.